From the beginning, God does not reveal what is holy until it is safe to receive. Revelation is never the first movement, guardianship is. This is why Scripture places watchfulness before unveiling, restraint before recognition, and silence before speech. The house is not open to the curious, it is entrusted to the faithful. After Eden, the garden is not destroyed, it is guarded. The way to the tree of life is kept, not erased. What was too dangerous to touch in a fallen state is preserved until healing can occur. The presence of guardians at the gate is not punishment, it is mercy. Life is protected from misuse. Jesus' repeated instruction to watch carries the same logic. He does not say claim. He does not say name. He does not say take. He says watch. Watching is covenantal patience. It is fidelity without possession. It is love that refuses to seize what belongs to God alone to unveil. This is why the house in Hosea is preserved through silence. Authority is withheld, not replaced. Ritual is paused, not reinvented. The people are not told to fabricate a new center. They are told to remain. Remaining becomes the proof of belonging. Only those who can endure absence without abandoning loyalty are fit to return when restoration comes. Even the tearing of the veil does not abolish discernment. Access is opened, but wisdom is still required. Nearness without reverence becomes violation. The holy does not become casual simply because it becomes accessible. The watchers are still needed, not to block the door, but to teach the heart how to enter rightly. Acts shows this training in real time. Leaders do not rush to define everything. They listen, they wait, they test fruit, they resist the urge to control what God is doing among the nations. Authority emerges slowly, shaped by restraint. The house grows because it is guarded, not because it is claimed. In this light, the watchers are not dramatic figures. They are ordinary, faithful ones who know how to keep silence. They know when not to speak. They understand that naming something too early exposes it to harm. What is precious is covered until it can stand. This is why the daughter is never introduced to a crowd. She is not proclaimed. She is preserved. Her presence is carried through quiet recognition, not public declaration. Those entrusted with guarding her do not announce what they sense. They protect it by remaining faithful, by staying hidden, by refusing to force what God has not yet revealed. The oil that fills the lamps is acquired in the same way. It is not advertised. It is gathered in secret through long preparation. Some lamps are lit long before the door is opened, not because the moment has arrived, but because the vessel must be ready when it does. Oil is never rushed. It is accumulated slowly through unseen devotion. This prepares the heart to understand why some things remain veiled. Why can't everyone name what they sense? Why claiming identity before formation fractures the soul? The house is not restored by proclamation, but by watchfulness. The dwelling is revealed only when it is safe to be seen. And so God trains a people not to rush revelation, but to guard it. Not to grasp inheritance, but to remain faithful to it. The watchers of the house do not stand at the door demanding entry. They stand within, tending the oil, keeping the flame, waiting for the moment when the door opens from the inside. This waiting is not passive. It is active fidelity. Watching means tending what is unseen, maintaining alignment when there is no affirmation, and loving what cannot yet be named. It is a discipline of the heart that refuses to substitute imagination for obedience. Those who watch learn how to live without spectacle. Scripture repeatedly shows that what is unguarded is quickly corrupted. Power claimed too early becomes domination. Identity named too soon becomes performance. Revelation exposed before formation becomes a burden rather than a gift. For this reason, God entrusts his most delicate works to those who know how to keep quiet joyfully. The watchers understand timing. They know that unveiling is not produced by desire, but by readiness. Desire reaches forward, readiness stands firm. This is why Jesus speaks of servants found awake when the master returns. Not because they were scanning the horizon impatiently, but because they were doing what they were assigned to do within the house. Watching is faithfulness in place. Even the language of oil reinforces this. Oil is produced under pressure through crushing and over time. It cannot be improvised at the door. It must be prepared in advance, carried without applause, and guarded against leakage and waste. Those who possess oil rarely talk about it. They simply tend their lamps. This also explains why confusion arises when people attempt to self-identify with roles or figures that Scripture treats with restraint. Identity in the household is recognized, not claimed. It is confirmed through alignment, endurance, and fruit. When identity is seized prematurely, formation collapses, leaving the person exposed rather than strengthened. The watchers protect against this collapse. They do not correct loudly, they stabilize quietly, they model patience, they remain in their assigned place even when others rush forward. Their authority is invisible because it is rooted in trust rather than recognition. The house itself teaches this lesson. A home is not open to strangers without preparation. It is kept, ordered, cleaned, repaired, and warmed long before guests arrive. The care provided before arrival determines whether the dwelling can sustain the presence afterward. God treats his dwelling the same way. In this sense, watchfulness is love. It refuses to exploit what is holy. It chooses protection over exposure. It trusts God with timing. Those who watch are not overlooked. They are entrusted. They become the quiet infrastructure of restoration. When the door finally opens, it will not be forced. It will open because the house is ready, the oil is sufficient, and the watchers are still at their posts, not demanding recognition, but ready to step back as the dwelling reveals itself in peace. And yet, even after the unveiling, watchfulness does not end. It changes form. What was once guarding in obscurity becomes guarding in clarity. The temptation shifts from forcing revelation to misusing it. The watchers remain because holiness, once revealed, is even more vulnerable than when it was hidden. This is why Scripture never presents revelation as the final goal. Revelation is a threshold, not a resting place. What matters is how the household lives after the door is open, whether intimacy is stewarded or exploited, whether authority is exercised as service or seized as entitlement. The watchers continue to matter precisely because revelation has occurred. Those trained in silence know how to protect meaning when words multiply. They recognize when language begins to outrun life again. They sense when devotion turns performative, when identity hardens into role, when proximity replaces reverence. Their presence stabilizes the house from within. This also explains why some are entrusted with nearness without being entrusted with visibility. Nearness is a gift. Visibility is a responsibility. Not all who are close are meant to be seen, and not all who are seen are close. The watchers understand this distinction intuitively. They are content with proximity without prominence. The oil, too, must now be maintained. Lamps that burn brightly can still run dry if neglected. The same quiet practices that prepared the oil are required to sustain it. There is no shortcut beyond unveiling. The inner work remains the work. In this way, the household does not regress into spectacle. It matures into stability. The fire is steady, not consuming. The dwelling is inhabited, not overwhelmed. Peace becomes the sign of authenticity. Those who once struggled with impatience begin to understand why God delayed, why things were veiled, why was silence required. The watchers do not explain this with arguments. Their very presence embodies the answer. They carry the weight of history without bitterness. They hold clarity without urgency. And so the cycle completes itself without closing. What was guarded is revealed. What is revealed is now guarded in a new way. The dwelling stands not because it was claimed, but because it was loved enough to be protected at every stage. This is the mystery of watchfulness. It prepares the house, welcomes the revelation, and then remains quietly ensuring that what God has restored can endure. What begins to emerge here is that watchfulness is not assigned to a season. It is a vocation. Some are called to build, some to speak, some to gather, but watchers are formed to remain. They are shaped by continuity. They hold the through line when movements shift and language changes. They are the keepers of alignment. This is why watchers are often invisible in the text. Scripture rarely names them directly, yet they are everywhere. They appear as those who linger when others depart, who stay awake when others sleep, who remain faithful when momentum fades. Their faith is not fueled by excitement, but by trust. They do not require novelty to stay loyal. The house depends on them more than it knows it does. When enthusiasm surges, watchers prevent distortion. When disillusionment threatens, watchers prevent collapse. They carry the memory of why the house exists in the first place, not its image, but its purpose. Even correction looks different in their hands. They do not rebuke from above. They realign from within. Their presence itself becomes a quiet recalibration. Others begin to slow down around them, to listen more carefully, to feel the weight of what they are handling. Watchers teach reverence without demanding it. This also reveals why God often hides his deepest work in ordinary faithfulness. Watchfulness rarely looks dramatic. It looks consistent. It looks like staying. It looks like tending small things when no one is watching. Yet Scripture consistently entrusts continuity to those willing to live this way. The daughter's safeguarding follows this same pattern. She is not hidden because she is weak, but because what she carries is strong enough to be misused. Strength requires covering until it can stand without being distorted. Those who guard her do so not out of fear, but out of understanding. They know what happens when power is exposed before it is mature. So the watchers continue, not anxious, not possessive, not controlling. They simply remain faithful to the rhythm God has set. They guard without gripping. They watch without claiming. They love without forcing recognition. And this, perhaps, is the most hidden truth of all. The house is not preserved by those who speak the loudest about it, but by those who quietly live as though it already belongs to God. When the story moves forward again, and it will, the watchers will not be surprised. They will recognize the next step the same way they recognize the last, not by announcement, but by alignment. They will stay where they are, doing what they have always done, keeping the dwelling ready for whatever God chooses to reveal next. There is also a subtle exchange that happens within the watchers themselves. Over time, their vigilance reshapes desire. What was once longed for now values coherence. What once wanted answers learns to live inside mystery without anxiety. This inner shift is essential because a house cannot be kept by those who are still negotiating impatiently. The watchers begin to recognize thresholds before others do. They sense when something is nearing readiness, not because they have been told, but because the atmosphere changes. Peace deepens. Noise loses its urgency. Questions soften. This sensitivity is not intuition detached from Scripture. It is discernment formed by long obedience. They also learn to distinguish between unveiling and intrusion. Not every opening is a door meant to be entered. Not every light is an invitation to approach. Some revelations are meant to orient, not to be touched. The watchers honor these boundaries instinctively. They know that reverence sometimes means stepping back. This posture protects the community from fracture. When excitement rises too quickly, the watchers steady the pace. When fear spreads, they anchor the moment. Their role is not to lead the movement, but to keep it from tearing itself apart. They preserve continuity when momentum threatens stability. Another quiet work they perform is remembering the cost. They do not allow the house to forget what silence taught, what exile refined, what restraint protected. This memory keeps gratitude alive and entitlement at bay. A household that remembers cost handles inheritance differently. In this way, watchfulness becomes the unseen teacher of the house. It instructs without lectures, corrects without confrontation, and forms without drawing attention to itself. Over time, others begin to mirror the posture, not because they were told to, but because it feels right within the dwelling. Eventually, the house itself begins to watch. The rhythm of restraint and readiness becomes communal rather than assigned. The need for designated watchers diminishes, not because their task failed, but because it succeeded. What they carried has been absorbed into the household's life. And still, some remain. There are always a few who stay closest to the threshold, not out of obligation, but out of love. They keep listening, they keep tending, they keep the dwelling responsive to God, rather than reactive to the world. Nothing dramatic marks this moment. No announcement is made. The house simply continues, alive, attentive, and capable of receiving whatever God entrusts next, without losing what has already been given. At this stage, watchfulness becomes almost indistinguishable from rest. The tension that once accompanied waiting dissolves into steadiness. What was effort becomes instinct. The watchers no longer measure time by delay or arrival, but by faithfulness. They are not counting moments until something happens. They are living in alignment with what already is. This is where true freedom appears. When nothing needs to be proven, defended, or accelerated, the soul settles. The watchers are free from comparison, free from rivalry, free from the pressure to interpret every movement as a sign. They can let God move at his own pace without anxiety, because their identity is no longer tied to outcomes. In this quiet freedom, perception sharpens again, not in the heightened way of anticipation, but in the grounded way of presence. The watchers notice small shifts others miss, not because they are looking harder, but because they are not distracted. They sense when something is being withdrawn as clearly as when something is being prepared. Both are equally holy. This attentiveness also protects against nostalgia. The watchers do not cling to previous unveilings or earlier seasons. They honor what has been given without trying to preserve it past its purpose. They understand that God's faithfulness does not repeat itself mechanically. It unfolds faithfully. Each stage carries its own form of obedience. Here, humility deepens, not the humility that shrinks, but the humility that makes room. The watchers know they are not the center of the story, yet they are essential to its continuity. Their role is not to define the house, but to ensure it remains hospitable to God's presence. Even joy takes on a quieter tone. It is no longer the joy of relief or discovery, but the joy of harmony. Things fit. Life flows without strain. The dwelling feels inhabited rather than managed. God's nearness no longer disrupts. It abides. If another unveiling comes, it will be met without shock. If silence returns, it will be honored without fear. The watchers have learned that both are expressions of care. God reveals because he loves, and God conceals because he loves. Neither threatens what has been entrusted. So the story continues without urgency. The house remains open, yet protected, known, yet unexploited, alive, yet at peace. Watchfulness has done its work, not by producing an ending, but by sustaining a way of life capable of receiving whatever comes next without losing itself. And this, finally, is how the dwelling endures. Not by constant revelation, but by a people formed deeply enough to live faithfully whether God speaks, waits, or remains among them. Thank you for being here. If this teaching helped you, please like, comment, and share. It truly helps this message reach those who are seeking. To our new subscribers, welcome. And if you'd like to go deeper, we invite you to join as a member. The link is in the description and on our homepage. We are praying for you and standing with you in the light of Messiah, he, and Messiah, she. If you'd like to support the ministry, you can visit our store or bless our dear brother Michael through the Buy Me a Coffee link below. Thank you for your love and encouragement, and stay tuned for the next video. May the spirit of wisdom and peace rest upon you always.